role in your mind does the brand play when you're starting a business?
I think it's the most important thing. To me, it was critical. To me, it's the scaffolding, the foundation of the way you show up, the way you sign your emails, the way you say hello when you get on the phone or you start any sort of media. So I think it's easy to think of brand as like a logo and a name. But to me, it causes you to really have to think about how you want to be showing up to the world.
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we'll help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. You'll discover insightful conversations from our powerful guests, founders, CEOs, and advisors of thriving businesses who are sharing how they have successfully built strong brands to help you expand and grow. I'm your host, Sue Kirshner, and today we're welcoming my good friend, Kyra Cavanaugh, to the show. Yay!
Hey, Sue.
Welcome. But let's delve into today's episode and turbocharge your brand. First, thank you so much for being here, Kyra. I'm excited to talk with you about branding when it comes to launching and selling companies.
It's so nice to be here. I'm so excited to be doing this with you and to be helping everyone who's listening and watching today.
Wonderful. So let me start by introducing Kyra to you. Kyra Cavanaugh is a wellbeing consultant and energy coach, providing workshops, coaching, and boot camps to help individuals and leaders manage stress, prevent burnout, find meaning, and create joy. And she's been a trusted advisor to hundreds of companies and thousands of professionals, helping them think differently about how work gets done and how life gets lived. And Kyra built and sold her first consulting company, Life Meets Work, in 2018, and has since launched her second consulting firm called 15B. As a certified healing meditation guide, she teaches classes, has written 2 books, produced podcasts, websites, and has a YouTube channel where she shares her wisdom on well-being and energy. So, did I miss anything?
I don't think so, Sue.
Your favorite color, maybe? Your favorite stuffing? We can get into all that.
I like cats.
Yeah.
Over dogs.
Excellent. I applaud that decision. All right, but let's dig in and talk about how important a brand is on day one when launching a new company, as well as how important it is when you sell it. So let's riff on that for a little while, because since you've launched 2 companies, what role in your mind does the brand play when you're starting a business?
I think it's the very first thing to be thinking about. And I just want to say thank you for having me today, Sue. I'm so excited to be getting into this with you because, truth be told, you've been with me every step of the way and taught me so much about branding. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to be with you. I think it's the most important thing. I know a lot of people, a lot of business owners will just jump in, passionate about doing. In both of my businesses, I felt like it was really important to find a name and to identify the attributes. Not only, I think obviously it starts when you're trying to build a web page or a website, and certainly in your mailers and those sorts of things. And there's so much contradictory information out there about whether and how much you should be branding. To me, it was critical. To me, it's the scaffolding, the foundation of the way you show up, the way you sign your emails, the way you say hello when you get on the phone or you start any sort of media. So I think it's easy to think of brand as like a logo and a name. But to me, it causes you to really have to think about how you want to be showing up to the world. And there are really important choices about that. And I think those choices have to be grounded in who you are and what you value most.
I like that. I love it. I love that whole scaffolding analogy because, yeah, you tend to, like you said, people get more invested in the doing. What are we going to do? What are we going to deliver? But it's like you need that scaffolding. You need that foundation at the base to say, well, this is our why. This is the passion behind it. This is what we're hoping to accomplish so that you can then build the walls around it in terms of how you're going to operate and who you're going to target and things like that. So I love that analogy. But okay, so your first company, Life Meets Work, you ran that for 10 years. How did you build that brand over time? Did you tackle it in phases, or as you were growing, did the emphasis on what the brand activity was, did it change?
I think it just grew deeper. So I think about when I started my business, I was working in marketing for a small consulting firm. And we'd been working with a brand agency that was also very small, two people who'd broken off from the advertising agency that they had built their careers in. And I remember reaching out to one of them when I started my own business and I said, how do I come up with a name? And he said, you got to do it the way we do it. Get a glass of wine and a piece of paper and a pencil and just start going at it. And I was like, what? So I feel like for me, the very earliest branding was very intuitive. Maybe the glass of wine just helps bring down kind of the defenses and the arguments in your head about why you would name something the way you did. But then as soon as I came up with Life Meets Work, it just made sense on so many levels. And then, I mean, those were such early days. They were HTML websites and, you know, everything cost so much money. And I just remember reaching out to a different friend at an ad agency and a personal friend of mine. And she was a designer. And I said, here's my concept. Could you create a logo? And she created a logo. If it wasn't free, it was close to free. And I loved it. And so it was from then, you know, we had colors and we had a name and we had a logo. But, you know, I had come from a 20-year corporate background. And so it felt very important to me at the time that I was a little company that seemed big. And if you think about big companies invest immense amounts of resources in their branding. Right. And so I think while that might feel a little outdated, at least for me right now, where I am with my brand, that really was my thinking behind it. And so I knew I needed to invest both in my own learning, in advisors and consultants and people who were expert in this. And partway through that first company, I rebranded. We kept the same name, but we updated and modernized. But even in those conversations, we were very mindful of the pieces of the original branding that we wanted to bring forward. I think the other thing that really helped was our values conversation. To really, you know, in those days, we really sat and had lots of conversations about who are we as a company, who are we as a team, and how do we want our customers to experience that? You know, so many times people will be driven by the consumer profiles or the business profiles or the personas or like the target market you want to go after. And I think that can easily drive a reactivity or a reactiveness to what we think the customer wants. But to me, Sue, it was always about who are we? And so quick story, you know, there was a moment where we said, well, should fun be one of our values? And if you think about if fun is one of your values, that needs to come out in your branding in a big, big way. Right. And we really started to talk about, well, if fun is one of our values, that is going to fundamentally change a whole bunch of things. And so we decided fun shouldn't be part of our values. Not because, I mean, who doesn't like to have fun? You and I have had lots of fun together.
Yes, almost too much.
Yeah, exactly. But we knew we weren't going to be able to uphold that commitment. So I think, you know, really being super clear about who you are and how you're going to come across. You don't want your brand to be manufactured. You want it to just flow effortlessly from who you are.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah. And I like your comment about wine. It's kind of like, I like to say that wine helps you dance better and speak Spanish better, but now I'm going to use the brand development piece of that as well. So
all of the above.
All of the above. It's all cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me a little bit then about what role the brand played when you sold Life Meets Work, because obviously you invested a lot of time, energy, and effort into the 10 years, the lifespan of that company. So do you feel like your hard work paid off? Did it give you a different outcome?
It's really, I laugh because the story of my brand in selling my business and what happened after the sale is quite interesting. So what I The short answer is yes. The branding absolutely helped because we had a lot of brand recognition in a market that there were a lot of people in the market. There were some individuals who had branded as individuals. There were nonprofits that had branded as nonprofits. There were academic, kind of professor-led initiatives that were branded. So there were a lot of brands out there and a lot of people rushing into this space. And so I came out with a strong brand, and I knew I didn't want to be my brand. I was very clear about that. And at that point, Oprah Winfrey was hot, 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 hot. And so the analogy was, well, don't you want to be Oprah? Because in consulting, it is the founder's voice. It is the founder's experience. It is the founder's vision that's being conveyed. But it was very important to me because I knew from the very beginning I wanted to sell. It was very important to me that I was not the brand. So we did have a lot of brand recognition, and the brand respect was also very strong. So was the buyer of my company. And that was so interesting because it was what the brand got us in terms of sales, in terms of reputation, that led to a contribution of value for the buyer. But then I quickly found out they didn't care about the brand because they felt strongly about their own brand. So in retrospect, I think, they would have given me the brand as part of the sale. And I think at that point, it felt very important to me to go off on my own and start a new brand. And so I didn't take my brand with me and bring it through. And I'm okay with that. But in the end, they actually didn't value the brand itself. So I think the lesson for me was get behind your brand, believe in your brand, drive your brand, have your brand be everything. And if you have any inkling or desire to sell, be sure that you have separated yourself from that brand. I'll tell you a funny little story, Sue. We just renovated our condo, and it was a commercial permit project, and the commercial plumber came in one day, and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And I used his first name. And I said, "I'm really interested in the name of your plumbing company." And he said, "Oh, that's because I don't want my name anywhere on it because I know one day I'm going to sell it." So I think that concept applies, no matter your business.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I know so many people who built their business to a specific size, and then went to go sell it and realized that they either had to be part of the sale. Personally, they had to be part of the sale, or their name had to be part of the sale. And I know a gentleman whose his last name was part of the business name. And when he sold it, even though he had a lot of brand awareness and equity for himself personally in the industry, he was not allowed to use his name in any kind of branding material going forward because the brand, his name and the brand of that firm had become so incredibly important and strong in the marketplace that whoever was buying it said, "No, this is what we're buying, the actual name, not some of the other assets, like in your case, where it wasn't, the name they were going for, it was the access that you had and this, the process and the people and all those kinds of things." But you're right. It's good to think about that before you get started. If my dream is to sell this, is my name attached to it? And is that going to be a problem later on?
Yeah, for sure.
I love that. So after you decided to sell the business, what made you decide to launch another company in the same space? And I know you said you were happy, you're okay with not taking that brand forward, but tell me a little bit about the new brand, why you chose that, who you're targeting, and what it was like to build something new again.
Exhilarating and like walking on hot coals or something. So the glass of wine was a little harder to energize another list of brand ideas the second time around. I guess at that point, I could have chosen to use my own name, but I had built a successful company, not going that direction. So it still felt important to find a name. the thing was, I knew that I was departing from the kind of work I'd been doing in the first business. I knew that, well, I don't know that I knew at that point, but I think it became pretty clear pretty quickly that I was shifting to more of a lifestyle business than build, grow, and sell. But I wanted this brand to reflect the shift in the worldview that I had made since establishing my first business. So 15B is a little, the reason behind it is a little heady. When you say life meets work, the old jokes were life crashes into work, life collides with work. There was a lot of discussion around the wordplay of that brand.
Mm-hmm.
I think 15B, well, first of all, I incorporated under a different brand name, and kind of like naming my second son. We just kept swirling around and trying on different names, trying to figure out, it wasn't so clear. Where we ended up, 15B is kind of heady and not obvious. And that has pluses and minuses. So the plus is, a lot of times people will ask, what is the meaning of your business name? And what's the meaning of your brand? And so that's a beautiful invitation to be able to explain the meaning behind the brand that immediately resonates with my clients.
Yeah.
And they can feel the shift, especially clients that I kept through both businesses. So 15 is the elemental number for phosphorus on the periodic table. And phosphorus is an element that exists in each one of us that emits light. And B instead of do. So 15B is really about providing you the opportunity to shine your light as bright as possible. And in our dark world, or the world that feels pretty dark sometimes, that feels very illuminating and on purpose, not by accident.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I'd say over the last 6 years of growing this business, I have now finally had to kind of wrangle and wrestle with the fact that ultimately I am my brand, and get more comfortable with being, especially in a lifestyle brand, you are the face of your brand. That, in my case, I don't have a ton of team members. And even with my team members, I feel more convicted about they are their own person within this brand. So, but I think the moment that I start talking with clients, whether they're new clients or old clients, they can feel that sense of lightness, of compassion, of desire to be of service. That's very different than the way I chose to characterize my first brand.
Okay. Now, with this new brand, 15B, one of your key target markets obviously is consumers. So now you're selling, but you do sell to businesses as well, right? You still can do training for teams and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, isn't that funny? Because I
Yeah.
actually have two brands. No, I have a consumer brand, which is freeyourself.world, and I have my business brand, 15B. And so 15B, that was a whole nother set of strategic decisions that needed to be made last year when we launched a consumer brand. Did we want that to be the same or different? And there are choices that we made accordingly. But what I would say is, yes, 15B is the B2B brand. It's the brand that's been out there for 6 years now. It's the brand that people know me and through, and most of our work is through the business brand. But I felt like it was important to have a personal brand because my desire, like I said, the brand is about letting an individual's light shine.
Mm-hmm.
So while my client is the customer, the people that I'm serving, is the company, the people that I'm serving are individuals. And I wanted a place where they felt like they could be free to be able to go and access resources that are free to them as a result of engaging with me through their company. Yeah.
Okay. And is there any bridge, other than obviously being able to talk directly to maybe some of the individuals you meet through the B2B marketing and work that you do, is there any bridge between the two brands?
Yeah, the color.
Either now or that you foresee in the future?
Yeah, there are some similarities. The colors are very similar. the round circle of 15B and the round circle of Free Yourself are meant to mimic each other. And the 15B logo is a nod toward the sun and
Okay.
light, and Free Yourself is all about these fiery oranges, colors of the sun and of fire. So yeah, that was intentional for sure. And the same designer that helped me with one helped me with the other and made sure that we were bringing some of those elements through. I think I would say the values and the intentionality behind both of those brands are also very similar. It's really about how can we help you elevate yourself in whatever way feels for you like it needs elevating. That work is fiery work. It's transformational work. You won't be the same person you were when you're done from where you started. And so that idea of fire and sun and brightness and heat is all part of the transformation process. Yeah. So it was very intentional.
Okay. Excellent. Let's talk about differentiation for a second, because like you talked about earlier with Life Meets Work, this whole idea about well-being and, getting people to, obviously feel better within an organization so they stay longer and things like that. 15B, you took a little bit different approach, which I thought was very unique, and you focused on something that I hadn't seen before, but it was team well-being. How has that helped you differentiate in basically kind of like a crowded marketplace when it comes to retaining people and helping
Yeah.
them feel better?
Yeah, I so appreciate you asking me this question because I think hopefully this can be instructional and beneficial for those of you who are listening. The world has changed, the world of branding. I mean, you would tell us this in a nanosecond, Sue. I don't need to tell you or anyone else, but in the last 18 years, things have shifted dramatically in terms of how both people and companies consume brands now. And interestingly, when I mentioned that I've had to get more comfortable with myself as the brand, that's the differentiator. That's what I'm realizing. As I'm approaching new prospects, when I'm reaching out to individuals, like you said, Sue, it's a very crowded marketplace. So how do you, and I think that's the question that's at the essence of branding. This is what you've taught me for sure, which is how do you convey that which is difficult to name? So people get a sense of you, mirror neurons teach us in less than a second. We're already picking up on each other's vibe.
Yeah.
And so how do you differentiate? How do you use that to differentiate yourself in a crowded market? That to me now is the essence, the ultimate question about branding, which is why I think it's so important that you're in alignment and integrity with your values and with your why and all those other things. I think for me, team well-being is still, it's been at the heart of what I've been doing through both of my businesses, which has to do with getting at the root cause of why well-being suffers in organizational environments. And that has been my brand all the way through, and it will continue to be. And very, very, very few of my competitors want to focus on that because it's a slower nickel rather than a faster dime. And it's also hard work. The person that I ran my last business with, she used to say, we do the hard stuff, don't we? And I'm like, yep, we do the hard stuff. So I think having your brand, for me, people call me when they want to do the hard stuff. Around team well-being is critical. I will say, on the other hand, and part of the reason why the freeyourself.world branding was so important to me was because there is also just this need for information. And so when clients trust me to be doing that slow work, sometimes you're doing the slow work by doing the shiny stuff, right? So if I can come in and we can make a big difference through a completely different approach to talking about well-being and engaging employees, then that can buy us some capital internally to be able to do the bigger branding work, the longer kind of transformational work, culture work within the organization itself. Yeah, I said branding work within a culture, but isn't that ultimately what we're doing, right?
Mhm.
For me, the employers that I'm working with, they're struggling with, or by the time they get to me, they're very conscious of how their culture brand, their employer brand, is being communicated to employees. And oftentimes they're recognizing there's a shift that needs to take place, but they need help with doing that. Yeah, so I never really made that connection, Sue, but I guess I'm helping organizations with their brand as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, yeah, I love all this talk about differentiation because obviously your name, 15B, is different. And like we were talking about, the fact that you focus on a particular niche within well-being also differentiates you. And then now, as you're saying, one of the values or, the value you can offer a company is for them to brand themselves a little bit different in a very crowded marketplace that's tough to attract and retain talent. So I appreciate that. And then another thing that's really important as a trend right now within the branding world is this whole idea of authenticity. Trust has always been a key factor for branding. You have to build a relationship in order to have a strong brand. And so, in order to have a relationship, you have to trust someone. But now, with the fact that we can't trust things anymore, right? We have a hard time trusting organizations. We have a hard time trusting media. We have a hard time trusting, even conversations and sometimes even facts and things like that get thrown our way. But what I love is that you are very authentic in the way that you stick to, like you were talking about, your core values, because I think that will help you build the strongest brand at the end of the day, is people know what they're getting when they work with 15B or Free Yourself or Kyra Cavanaugh. So,
Yeah, and that is not an easy pursuit. My heart goes out to anybody who's listening to this who
yeah.
is thinking, yeah, but I'm like, yeah, I have the yeah buts every day. So I don't want to come across as though like I've got it down. I think the key is do you keep getting up every day and keep working on it, right?
Huh?
And the other part of it for me is that authenticity means vulnerability.
Yes.
And vulnerability in a crowded marketplace, vulnerability when you're talking about whether you're going to be able to pay your rent or your mortgage after working on your small business and making this big sacrifice and commitment, that's vulnerability, right? Like that's vulnerability that a lot of times nobody sees. I think the challenge is, can we as small business owners continue to get up every day and say, I'm committed to my authenticity. I'm committed to being vulnerable. I'm committed to doing this super hard work. I'm committed to going even deeper to make sure that my client's experience is in alignment with who I am and what I want, and not just for me, but for them and for the world.
Right.
And to me, that's some of the hardest work you'll ever do. Parenting is also super hard, but in a way, isn't it the same? It's the stewardship. It's this
Hmm.
idea of stewarding this vision,
Yeah.
this goal, this ideal that you have, whether it's through your children, whether it's through client interaction, whether it's through the way you convey your brand visually, or the way you're showing up for your clients day after day after day. But to pretend that that all happens easily, to pretend that that doesn't happen without an insane amounts of soul searching, fetal position, crying, pulling yourself up and putting on your superhero cape,
Yeah.
faking it till you make it. I mean, all that stuff to me, that's how you get to that authenticity in your brand because people can feel it. I was just thinking, I called a client the other day and I said, just by me saying hello, and she said, big exhale, audible exhale. And she said, thank you for being sunshine for me today.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's branding.
Yeah.
That's branding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the things that, building off of what you're talking about, that this is hard and it's hard work. And whether it's brand building or just running the business in general, it is incredibly hard. And the day-to-day challenges just wear you down. And that is to me one of the biggest joy that I have in doing this brand building work and helping companies identify their brand as they grow, is I'm able through my process, to go back and capture their why, right? Why did you want to start this business? Why do you want to keep getting up every day, like you talked about, and dealing with the challenges and things like that? And I have been in presentations where I'm coming back and saying, hey, I've identified your brand. This is it. Where the owner tears up, and it's like you help them fall in love with their business again by absolutely focusing in on this is our why, these are our values, and this is how we're going to make a difference in the world. And it's truly transformational. So
It really is. It really is. I think too, it really can, your brand can be the guiding light. Your brand, I love what you're saying there, Sue, that keep coming back to who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing this?
right.
Why am I getting up every day and foregoing the stable paycheck, even if I hated my job? Why am I getting up and doing this? We used to say early days of Life Meets Work, we'll wash your car in order to pay our mortgage, right?
Yeah.
Branding is about bringing you back and saying, unless you're in a car wash business, don't wash the car.
Right.
And sometimes that's the hardest thing you can say is, no, I don't do that, because immediately the amygdala goes, I got to pay my mortgage, right?
Right.
So, or my rent. So to me, branding is the true north. It's the guiding light. It's like you said, it's the foundation, the pilings, the dig, that keep the building in the ground. To me, that's what branding is. It keeps reminding you that while it would be easy to say, I'll wash your car so I can buy my groceries this week, it's about saying, no, I'm going to stay true to my brand. I'm going to stay true to my original purpose. I'm not at all surprised that people tear up when you present their brand to them, because what you're doing is you're giving them a mirror where they can reflect back when times are hard on, why am I doing this? What am I doing? What's my brand promise? What are my attributes? And so I got to just give you a shout out, because you helped so many times, and you heard me whining, and you heard me challenging you and being like, I don't want to come up with brand attributes. This is too hard. So part of the hard is getting at that brand and really defining that. And so, yeah, I would give you a shout out every day. I will continue for the rest of my life, because to try to do it alone is really tough, because you don't have that mirror. All you have is your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own fears, all of that. So to have someone like you to be able to really help you climb out of all of that, elevate and say, okay, what am I doing? It's really hard to do that by yourself. And so I just want to give you a shout out and tell you how much I appreciate
Well, thank
how much
you.
you've helped me, for sure. And even when I'm not doing some of the things you tell me to do, your voice is in my head. I'm like, who's my brand persona again?
There you go.
What's my market? Like, who am I targeting? How am I connecting?
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I would say, is that branding is a lifelong pursuit. Would you agree, Sue?
It's absolutely a lifelong pursuit. I was told to stop saying this because no one likes exercising. But to me, brand building is like exercising, right? There's a component of it that, you have to build on the strength. How do you make it stand for something? How do you build your muscle mass, so to speak? And then, like exercising, if you taper off, if you stop thinking about it, if you stop actually, focusing on communicating and delivering on that brand, it atrophies. It no longer is part of, your muscle mass and how strong you are. And it's also, from the exercising part, it's the flexibility of it. How far can you stretch your brand? Well, you have to kind of test that. And, you have to be strong before you start stretching and going into, let's say, new markets or launching new products and services and things like that. So yes, it is a lifelong pursuit. You can't just, I'm going to, spend some money and identify it, and then we're good. We're done. We don't have to think about branding anymore. It doesn't work that way. And yeah, I love what you're talking about, because I talk a lot about how the brand provides the gift of clarity and focus. But as we were talking here, I'm like, you know what? I need to double down and talk more about, it's also the motivation. It's also that, like you said, the inspiration on the days when it's hard is to go back to the brand and absolutely reacquaint yourself with why your company exists and what you're trying to do. So Anyway, but
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for the kudos. I love talking to you. But yeah, so just to kind of one last question for you. I like to end all of my interviews with saying that, I'm passionate about small businesses putting more emphasis on branding. So would you give a shout out to a small business that you think does a great job branding itself?
Yes. So she is an embodiment coach I worked with last year, and I'll share her name with you in just a moment. What I will say is when I saw her brand, my mouth, like, so now people definitely want to go check her out. Like, I thought, holy mackerel,
Yeah.
hearing someone talk about authentic who is putting herself out there in this big, bold, audacious way.
Hmm.
And looking at her and how she built her brand and how she continues to live her brand, I literally have goosebumps because she inspires me every single day. So her name is Naema Pierce. It's Naem as a man, A Pierce, Pierce.com. In her case, she is her brand.
Uh-huh.
Ooh, look out. She is incredibly powerful. That she's a coach that works with women who are trying to find the power. And just like you've been pivotal in my life, she has been as well. So I encourage you, I mean, even just the visuals of her website, but then how she carries that through in all of her communication. And she's a B to C marketer,
Okay.
has been truly inspiring. So yeah, proud to give her a shout out.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kyra. And you have been pivotal to me in my life as well, because obviously I help consult and guide you, but I love seeing how much energy and effort and success that you get when you put into building these companies. So thank you for spending time with me today and sharing your insights on branding. But if people want to learn more about how you can help them boost well-being and energy within an organization or individually, or even book you to speak or find out about your retreats, how can they find you?
Oh, thanks, Sue. So my company brand is the number one, the number five, the letter B as in boy, E.com. So if you're thinking about workshops or well-being strategy for an organization, that's where I'd point you. But if you're looking for some resources about how to build energy, I would encourage you to go to freeyourself.world and you'll find my YouTube channel there and all kinds of free resources that can help you let your light shine brightly. Thank you so much, Sue. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you about branding today.
Yes, no, the pleasure is mine. Thank you. I always love spending time talking with you. We have great fun. But thank you for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could help me build this show brand. Please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and maybe even leave a review. And if you or someone you know would be a great guest for the show, a founder or CEO with an inspiring branding story, please let us know in the comments or connect with us via email. Thank you and stay tuned for our next episode.